Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles. Welcome back to another full card breakdown, this time for UFC 310, and this time for the second time on maybe what is the worst live stream you'll ever see on this channel. It has been a struggle with technology, with sickness, and everything else we have in between. And now we can't even figure out how to do the layout properly on our iPad. Regardless, my computer's completely shot, so I appreciate you guys tuning in with me. Regardless, we're going to keep this one short and sweet. We got some fights to talk about, and we have 14 of them, including a phenomenal headline between Rachmanov. Oh, it's not even a headline. It's a great co-main between Rachmanov and Gary, and a headliner between Pantoja and Asakura. It is a phenomenal fight card. 14 fights to talk about, and we are going to do so with whatever we can, regardless of audio and camera quality. We get the fight night started with the 13-5 Kennedy and Njoku versus the 9-5-1 Lucas Bresky. We have ourselves a large favorite in this matchup, and you kind of see why, right? You have the surging Kennedy and Njoku who has made his way up to heavyweight, who has looked good doing so. Facing Lucas Bresky, who's been on a bit of a down slope recently, right? He did lose that last time, first round knockout to McParkin. Not a guy who's always getting knockouts either, so he is someone who is kind of on the down slope. And although Kennedy and Njoku is coming up a weight class, he's still going to have the height advantage. He's still going to have the reach advantage, and he is still someone who you would have to call the better overall fighter. Lucas Bresky is the type of guy who did get popped for PEDs recently and is not the same fighter since. And having a guy like Kenny Njoku as the favorite seems like only the right thing to do here, considering his overall skill set and considering the trajectory of his career. Regardless, though, I do think the line is wide. This is the same fighter, Njeku, who did drop a fight to OSB that he shouldn't have, who has been a bit inconsistent, whose chin isn't always there. I don't really want to lay chalk on him. More times than not, I do think he wins this fight, especially considering that the durability of Breshki's kind of been on the up and down recently. So the pick is Canadian Njeku. Not confident enough to parlay it. Don't know if I'll have any action on this one, but one where I do think gets it done. When it comes to DraftKings, though, it is an interesting bout. It is heavyweight. It is anticipated to end inside the distance, so there is some GBP viability for someone like Njeku at 9.4K. He certainly stands out more than a Bryce Mitchell above, who we'll talk about later, but he's a fine tournament play. Again, inconsistent, so I'm not forcing him into my lineup, not getting him too often. Just a guy who I will be sprinkling in and being around tournament evens, just so I don't get burned by him. Another heavyweight matchup, and one where I am picking Kennedy Njeku. Next up, we have the 38-24 Clay Guida versus the 14-3-1 Chase Hooper. Large favorite here for Chase Hooper, and another matchup where you kind of see why. He had a phenomenal performance last time out there, dropping and looking really good there on the ground against um, who did he fight last time? Against Borshev, a really good fight there in that one. And he has since coming out here against a guy in Clay Guida, who has been submitted a bunch of times, who has not looked the best recently. So it does seem like a clear setup for a guy who is much younger and still coming to his own side of the UFC here. You have to favor the ground game of Hooper. You have to probably favor even the volume and the striking of Hooper as it improves as well. And it just seems like one where it's going to come to the ground at one point, and you do have to favor that submission upside of someone like Chase Hooper. Am I willing to play the price tag? Probably not, but I do think he wins at the distance, and therefore is a solid DraftKings play at 9.7K if you can get up to him. Scored 134 last time, 120. There is definitely ways that he could bust at 9.7K. I don't think he's a lock to make the optimal lineup, but still someone I will be sprinkling in because he's got the best chance to win the entire card. I do think he wins at the distance more times than not. I think he checks a lot of these boxes to go out there and score pretty well this weekend. So if you can afford to get up to him, I certainly would. I will tell you that it is a spot that I do think he's set up to succeed, a spot where I do think he should do well, and I am picking to win here. Give me Chase Hooper. Next up, we have the 20-10 Max Griffin versus the 17-7 Michael Chiesa. Another one where we have two older guys, veterans of the sport, and a pretty close line. Getting right to the point here, I did end up picking Max Griffin in this one, and that's really against me because I am typically a guy who favors my grapplers and my wrestlers, and Michael Chiesa definitely fits that bill here. But I think in a matchup like this, the physicality of someone like Max Griffin's gonna be too much, and I do think Max Griffin's able to win these striking exchanges on the feet. Chiesa is able to absorb damage pretty well, but a guy who can be hit, a guy who will be a bit slower in those exchanges. And although I do think he could dictate the wrestling exchanges, shall it get there, Max Griffin has shown decent takedown defense. He has shown that although he's 39, is still able to go out there, utilize physicality pretty well. I think it's a really close fight, but gun to my head, I did pick Max Griffin. DraftKings wise, though, I kind of have more upside towards the Chiesa side. Again, I'm picking against him, but at 7.9K, his path to victory includes wrestling, includes takedown. He scored 101 against Magny, 110 against Sanchez, 97 last time against Ferguson. His path to victory scores better on DraftKings, whereas Griffin, I don't see him getting knocked out too often. I think he's a more damage-based decision type of guy where he scored 50 points in a win last time, scored 84 in his win before that. It's a spot that I do think he is able to win, but doesn't score as well on DraftKings. So if anything on DraftKings, I will be going towards a dog here in Chiesa because he does have wrestling upside. But gun to my head, I did pick Max Griffin. I do think he has the striking exchange. I do think he has the physicality to keep it upright, but a pretty close fight. as the sun rains down on me in the horrible live stream setup we have here, we'll continue going on with a phenomenal fight here. The 17-6-1 Cody Durden versus the 11-2 Joshua Van, one of my favorite fights in the entire card. It should be an absolute banger. It almost on paper looks like wrestler versus grappler or wrestler versus striker here. Van being the striker, 23 years old, still improving, but I think there's more layers to it. At a 125 fight like this, first of all, I think this would be a pretty fun one, pretty high paced one, but both guys are going to bring different styles. Durden's going to want to go out there and wrestle. With that being said, though, he has struck in the past. Joshua Van is a guy who has been a bit of a fan favorite in the UFC, and it's easy to see why. A ton of volume. He builds as the fight goes on, but still very, very raw. On paper, the size, the wrestling, and everything points towards Cody Durden, but I ended up picking Joshua Van this week. Durden has been more apt to strike. He is someone who I do think has the ability to go out there and maybe not wrestle as much as we'd like him to. And if that's the case, if Van builds as the fight goes on, he's got leg kicks. Durden is there to be hit. Matt Snell was having some success in the feet against him, and I did end up picking Joshua Van to get it done. Now, Van's durability is still in question. We have yet to see him really taken down, so Durden could have an avenue there, but Van is at least working up to his feet. He's someone who I do think is able to win the optics there, and someone who I also favor his cardio a little bit more. Durden is someone who has slowed down. Durden is someone who, again, will strike more than he probably should and does leave his head on the center line. So give me Joshua Van from a win perspective, but similar to that last spot, if I had to pick a side on DraftKings, it'll probably be Durden. 7.7K. He is someone who his path to victory is more reliant on wrestling. Scored 129 against Johnson in a 3-round decision there, 112 against Buys. When he's able to get off on his wrestling, he's able to usually score pretty well. Whereas Van, I think if he wins, it's maybe either a late finish or a volume-based decision where he still it doesn't always start that fast. He won a pretty close fight against Master Z, it's called that way, and scored 80 points. So although the volume is there, the upside is there. I don't mind Durden as underdog this week at 7.7K, considering his path to victory relies on the ground game. However, gun to my head, I did pick Joshua Van to win this fight. Next up, we have the rebooking of Chris Weidman, 16-7 versus 16-8 Eric Anders. Now, shout out to Eric Anders getting back in there. I know he had a tough time last time in the weight cut, but hopefully this fight does materialize. 195 this time, and the breakdown is going to stay the same as last time. I understand the love for Weidman, especially considering the way the fight was canceled last time, but I still am going to have to pick Eric Anders here. It was only a couple fights ago where we were like creasing every time Wyden was absorbing damage, right? He's still older. He's still someone who doesn't absorb damage that well and who kind of looks pretty slow. I mean, he did get a win last time against Bruno Silva, but Bruno Silva's on the way out. That was an interesting fight here. I think Eric Anders is making more improvements in his career. I think he's the more physical fighter of the two, and is someone who I do think can defend the takedowns of Weidman and land the more impactful shots in the feet. This could be a really close and ugly fight, but I have more faith in Anders' durability, which is pretty disgusting to say considering his drop by Jamie Pickett, to be able to continue to land the big shots, hammer minute winning upside, and probably more finish upside in that as well. Would I be surprised if Wyman landed a couple takedowns one that way? Probably not. But if I had to choose a winner, it's probably Eric Anders if he's able to make a proper weight cut and not get sick this time. DraftKings wise, same as last time. It's a pretty close one. They're lying pretty closely on DraftKings. I don't want too much involvement in it. Anders has been historically not the best scorer. 94 last time against Jamie Pickett, 81 against Stewart, 55 against Mearshart to win. I can very well see this being a low volume affair where it's the minutes of Weidman, the moments of Anders, and it just doesn't score that well. I think Weidman could have some grappling upside to score well, but I prefer other dogs, as I mentioned. I think Chisea and Durden both are underdogs with grappling upside. You can score pretty well. I prefer them, if anything. I did pick Anders, but not my favorite fight from a DraftKings perspective, and one where you're kind of rooting for Weidman at this point of his career, but definitely not a fight you definitely have to roster. Putting it that way. Next up, we have ourselves a interesting one here. Actually, we have the 19-5 Randy Brown, 11-2 Brian Battle. Brian Battle coming off a phenomenal win over there in France, where he walked him down, broke him, and had a pretty good interview after. I actually picked against Brian Battle in that spot, and I'll admit it, bad bet, but I thought he was someone who I would favor Juicet in the distance striking. I would favor him to go out there and be able to pick him apart from range. And although Brian Battle probably wins more moments, I thought Juicy was able to have some success. What Brian Battle showed was he's going to push through adversity. He's going to go out there and try to bring the fight to someone and look to break them over the course of time. And in a fight like this, it's kind of a similar dynamic. Now, do I think Brian Battle skill for skill should be minus 250 here? Probably not. I think it's a closer fight than that entails because I think at range, the size, the length of someone like Randy Brown could go out there and win minutes. I wouldn't be surprised that way. However, considering the style that Brian Battle brings to the octagon, I think he's going to push forward. I think he's going to win more moments. And I think he has more finishing upside considering Randy Brown's chin has been rocked. So, although I think the line can be wide as if Randy Brown go out there and win minutes from the outside, I think Brian Battle wins the moments. I think he has more finish equity. And I think he is someone who can push a pace and can close the distance enough to win those moments. I did pick Brian Battle. Am I playing at minus 250? Probably not. DraftKings wise, very similar here. 8.7. He does have knockout upside, so I do want to sprinkle him in GP format. Scored 119, 102, 126, 127 in his last four wins. Phenomenal scores, but typically a guy who I think needs that finish to score very, very well. Considering the pace I've seen, though, I will be rostering him, especially in tournament formats. Moving on, we are first of all going to try to get the sun out of my eyes here. Voila. Oh, that made it worse. Voila. And then we are going to shout out the people hanging out here. Mikey asking if we're completely done with the Wednesday show. Not completely. We bring it back where we can, but certainly on the down low, we're all pretty busy. And you add in the sicknesses we've been having and technical difficulties, as you're seeing right now on stream. It's been a bit tougher. However, be sure to check out all their content, and we'll be happy to talk fights whenever we find the time. Let's put it that way. All right. Next fight up, we have the 18-0 Mozar Evloev versus the 24-4 Aljamain Sterling. Now, a fight that's on the prelims, which has been debated as if it should be or not, but two high-level guys. Undefeated Mozar Evloev, who's been at the top for a while, who has looked very, very good. No one's been able to beat him. Versus the 24-4 former champ and Aljamain Sterling. I have still yet to see Aljamain Sterling thrive at 145, so it'll be exciting to see how he looks here. But this looks on paper at least like a wrestling match, right? Who is able to get the better of the two? It's the more back take guy of Aljamain Sterling, the funk master on the feet, or the technical wrestler in Evloev who has got good pressure, smart tactics, and has been able to win fights based off of his decision and minute winning capabilities. That at least makes it for an interesting one. However, both guys have more boring style, so I see why it is on the prelims that way. I have seen Mozar Evloev taken down. I have seen him put in precarious situations. I don't think Aljamain Sterling's going to lose this fight 100% of the time. But if you want to ask me who I see winning the strength battles in those clinch exchanges, who I see being even the cleaner strike from the feet as well, I have to pick Mozar Evloev. Even at that, I see him landing the takedowns and being on top position more times than not. And we've seen he's made out of rubber. It's really tough to submit that guy. So I think Mozo Evloev is the rightful favorite, and I have picked him to win. But I do think it maybe could be closer here. Sterling, I think, can compete in the feet. He's got a diverse arsenal of weapons in the striking, and we know he can take the back and steal around that way too. But the guy with more strength, the guy who I think will have more hand speed as well, is going to be Evloev, and I have to pick him to win here. DraftKings wise, I think it's going to be a lot of grappling exchanges, so I think it could score well. But Evloev at 8.9K, it's hard to prioritize him above the people around him. He has scored well in the past, 119 against Lopez, 130 against Ige, 130 against Davudu. He could score very, very well. I think he's a guy who I want to mix in, but it's hard to prioritize him over a Pantoja right below him, over Rakhmonov or even Hooper. He's a secondary option for me. I will be getting to him because I do think he wins. I do think there's grappling exchanges, but when you do have two wrestlers, would I be surprised if it was a striking exchange the whole time? Probably not. So I will be definitely cautious with my exposure here to him. However, I do think he's a fine tournament play. I do think the upside is definitely there considering his box scores. Next fight up, we have the 22-10-1 Vicente Luque versus the 14-4 Themba Gorimbo. And this fight simply comes down to, is Vicente Luque done? Because last time we saw him go out there and give up to Joaquin Buckley. And Joaquin Buckley definitely hits very, very hard, but a guy that that's not really what we want to see from Luque because he has been a warrior. He has fought through fires, fought through adversity. He's looked very, very good doing so. Whereas Themba Gorimbo, it definitely brings a different style than the guys that Luque is losing to, right? Then Magrimbo exploded onto the scene, got given a house by the rock. The guy was living the dream. And yet he's going out there and he's utilizing more cardio-based pressure. He is being more of a madman, utilizing cardio in there. And although he can mix in takedowns, although you can go out there and you can land a ton of volume on the feet, I think Magrimbo doesn't have the most one-shot power that the Buckleys of the world would offer Luque, whose chin's a concern. But he's a guy who's kind of sloppy in that. He has been submitted before. I do think he can be hitting the feet as well with his head in the center line. I think if this fight was 2 years ago, Vicente Luque is a minus 800 favorite. But considering what we've seen from Luque in the past, him hesitant to being hurt, him giving up that last fight, it is a real question of at what stage of his career is he in? Is he still able to accept any damage here? And that's the real question. I know that Garimbo's going to go in there and give it his all. And I think because of that, we have a proven commodity of him going to wrestle a lot here and push a heavy pace and probably win minutes. But more times than not, I think Luke is a better fighter. I think Luke has more power, and I think Luke has a more submission game. So I do think it's one where the winner looks like a hindsight good bet. But I ended up picking gun to my head Garimbo because I'm still scared of Luque. However, I think the best play on this one's probably the fight doesn't go. Plus 120 fight doesn't go. I think it's pretty simple. Either Garimbo goes out there, make Luque quit because Luque is washed. But if Luque isn't washed, I think he's able to catch a neck. I think he's able to throw and exchange power still against a guy in Garimbo who's there to be hit. And I think an under is pretty viable here, but I do think Garimbo is the play I went with. And on DraftKings is a solid play at 8.6 because again, if Luque is wash. And if Luque is not himself anymore, he's going to allow himself to be taken down, allow himself to be pushed against the cage and thrown against. Grimbo scored 123, 109, 130, 113, and scored very well. So 8.6K, a solid play. Flip side of things, I want Luque as well because 7.6, finish upside, submission upside. The guy's definitely scoring well in his wins, and they're often coming by finish. So give me this fight on DraftKings. Give me this fight to go under. I do think it's inside the distance, but not my highest confidence play when it comes to picking a winner outright because it all depends on what state Vicente Luque is in his career. Next up, we have the 37-20 Anthony Smith versus the 13-4 Dominic Reyes, a battle between the two older guys, the two former title challengers, and another spot of where are these guys in their career, right? Um, Anthony Smith's definitely been more of a I'm gonna outlast you, I'm gonna outsurvive you, I'm gonna beat you as the fight goes on. He's got the heart of a lion, and him coming out in interviews this week saying he's got a lot of anger, he wants to go out there and throw and swing and bang. It's definitely not the best look because he has been knocked out before too. Dominic Reyes also looked like his career was over, but he was able to find a big knockout win last time. And I think simply put, the guys he's losing to are styles that I don't think Anthony Smith brings, right? Anthony Smith Sorry. Reyes is going out there, he's being knocked out by Jiri, by Span, by Blachowicz. Like he's going out there and he is being finished. Whereas Anthony Smith's not a power guy. He is a guy who wants to beat you down the stretch, leg kicks, outlast you, right? And I think that allows for Dominic Reyes, whose chin is still in question, to survive as the fight goes on. I think this line's wide because I do think Anthony Smith has submission upside on the ground. I do think he's always sneaky, and I do think this fight could be played out at a slower pace than people think. But if Anthony Smith's talking in interviews how he's going to go out there and just swing for the fences and because he's got a lot of anger in him. I favor Reyes' power, and I don't think Smith necessarily has the power in his own right to knock out someone like Reyes. So I think more times than not, I do have to favor the Reyes side of things. I picked Reyes again, low confidence. I do think Smith has more line equity, but certainly a fight I don't want too much involvement in because both these guys are hard to trust at this point of their career. DraftKings wise, 9.1. I guess Reyes has some round of finish upside, but I prefer the people around him. Prefer an Evloev, Rakhmonov, who we'll talk about later. Again, another secondary play in that top range. Whereas you look at the Smith side of things, he kind of has some viability to me because I do think he wins more than the 7.1K price tag entails. I do think he has submission upside. I do think he's able to fight a solid fight here, stay into it here, especially if it's extended. And I do think it's a spot where he does have an opponent with a questionable chin. I don't see him knocking at Reyes too often, but that's how you beat him. And I do think 7.1K, he does have some finish equity. I don't mind sprinkling him in, but again, not my favorite play. Another mid-range or bottom range, sorry, pivot play for tournaments. Now, moving on to the main card, we have ourselves the 18-5 Nate Landwehr, 15-5-1, 15-4-1, sorry, Du Hu Choi. This is a very fun fight. Again, another one of these contenders for fight of the night because both these guys will go at it, and it's a Nate Landwehr fight. Nate Landwehr goes out there, swings for the fences, has these really entertaining fights, and typically has the cardio, the heart, and the will to win, to break people when as the fight goes on. Whereas Duo Choi, the Korean Superboy, has also been in some phenomenal fights. He also has a ton of durability, a ton of heart, and will throw pretty heavy. I've been going back and forth in this one, but I'm going to pick the dog here in Duo Choi straight up. I think as the fight starts, I favor the hand speed of Duo Choi. I think he's able to get to the spot quicker. And I do think that he has a ton of power to knock out a guy like Nate Landwehr, who has been knocked out plenty of times before. It's one of those spots where he's either knocked out early or he gets rocked and is able to come back. I think Duo Choi can definitely knock him out early. But as the fight goes on, I do think Nate Landwehr builds. I do think there could be wrestling exchanges where neither of these guys are the best defensive wrestler, but can have wrestling metrics, and I may favor the wrestling of Nate Landwehr. But the hand speed early, the power of Duo Choi, I think could be dangerous, and I do think that could lead for him to have some early success. As the fight goes, like I said, Landwehr could take over, but early on, give me Duo Choi, and he is my pick to win. He also has some ability to fight in some wars there, so I like Duo Choi. I'm a big fan of him, and I do think it's going to be a banger, one where I wouldn't be faulting you for taking Nate Landwehr because he does build as the fight goes on. But that hand speed, the boxing, the power of Duo Choi, I do think could hurt him early and probably win those first rounds at a pretty high clip. So give me Duo Choi. DraftKings wise, I picked an underdog outright, so I will be loving some Duo Choi. 7.8K, just scored 93 last time against Algio, scored 102, 107, 129 in his wins before that. Has a ton of power, has a round win equity, and I think at 7.8K could score very, very well. Nate Landwehr, however, also a phenomenal drafting score. In his last win, scored 115, 102, 104. He goes out there, fights at a high clip. He can throw volume as the fight goes on. I think he could have some wrestling equity too. He has to survive early. Another fight I want a lot of exposure to on DraftKings, but if I'm picking the dog to win outright, I love me some Duo Choi at 7.8K. On to the next fight in the main card here. Shout out to everybody tuning in. Again, I apologize for the horrible video quality, the setup we have going on here. Laptop burnt out, a bit ill, but we're getting the video out to you guys. Check out Established Run, check out Coolbet. You guys know the drill. Appreciate you guys checking it out regardless. All right. 16-2 Bryce Mitchell, 5-2 Cron Gracie. Huge favorite here in Mitchell, and you kind of see why. Cron Gracie looked horrible last time. He was pulling guard, not really wanting to do too much. It is surprising to see him on a main card once again, but he's getting a guy in Bryce Mitchell, a guy who, you love, but I hope this guy stays healthy, man. Going out there and saying the things he is online, being a bit crazy, putting himself in a precarious situation, being knocked out as bad as he has been. It's a tough sledding for Thug Nasty. Now, is Kron Gracie going to knock him out like Josh Emmett did? No. So it becomes a fight where is Bryce Mitchell going to put himself on the ground? Is he going to put himself in these precarious situations? Because he wants to wrestle. That's his game plan, and he has been submitted before. So I think there's definitely a world where Bryce Mitchell can be an idiot, look to go out there and grapple and get submitted. But more times than not, you have to favor Bryce Mitchell's activity, the fact he'll actually do something, his striking on the feet, his volume, and his overall hand speed and skill set. Like Kron Gracie is going to go out there and look to submit you, and if he can't do that, he's going to butt scoot, he's going to lose. So more times than not, I think Bryce Mitchell is smart enough to not get tangled up in these exchanges and survive as the fight goes on, land more volume, but you never know. DraftKings wise, I can't get to Bryce Mitchell because I don't see him landing a million takedowns. We know that if he's going to go out there with this fight, it's probably with striking. It's probably to win as the fight goes on, and he's at 9.5K. So can you take a guy who has more decision equity over someone like a Chase Hooper or a Kennedy Njeku or a Rakhmonov? This does not rate out too well at 9.5K. I almost prefer Kron Gracie as a punt this week. And hear me out. I'm not picking him to win, but if Kron Gracie wins, it's because Bryce Mitchell is an idiot and wants to go out there and grapple. And he said it and embedded. He wants to prove to him he's the better grappler. Kron Gracie's win condition scores very, very well in DraftKings, and I want some exposure to it in case, Bryce Mitchell does mess up. So 6.7K, I don't think he wins without scoring 100 points. Punt play, again, not my favorite fight on DraftKings. I'm picking Bryce Mitchell. There's a ton of variables in this one. Not my favorite fight in it at all, but I think it could be interesting to say the least. 3 fights to go. We have ourselves the 12-2 Cyril Gane versus the 38-10 Alexander Volkov, a rematch. And it's hard to say anything different from the first time. First time Cyril Gane went out there, had a pretty dominant 50 to 45, 5 round striking affair. And it was clear that his striking was quicker. It was clear that he's the better kickboxer of the two. And although Volkov's on a nice run, he's making improvements. It's hard to say too much different from the first time. Nagano is still going to have more weapons with a kick, with a hand speed, and is the better pure kickboxer, and is also able to manage distance a bit better, which is a bit surprising considering the height of Volkov. If there's any grappling exchange, maybe Volkov can have success, but he didn't shoot last time, so it's hard to call this fight any different than the first time. So got his loss when he's been wrestled, and Volkov just doesn't really have it in him all too often. So the pick is Gane. Nothing's different here. It seems to be another 30-27. That seems to be the matchup because in a kickboxing affair, you have to favor Cyril as the better striker of the two. DraftKings wise, though, it's hard to play either of them because last time they fought, they had 5 rounds, and he's got 85 points of Cyril Gane. He has never scored above 100 points in a decision win, including 5 rounders. And I do think in his 1 3 round decision, he scored 56 points. So 9K, I prefer the people around him. I think it's going to be a slower pace striking affair, one where we do see the levels of Gane to this matchup. But I don't think he's knocking out Volkov. I think it's just going to be a one where he's just better technically, which doesn't score the best on DraftKings. Prefer Reyes, prefer Evloev. We've talked about all these names already. Volkov, I don't think he's the better striker, so it's hard to pick him. If he goes out there and wrestle, could be a solid play, but give me Gane to win, especially to win as the fight goes on. Nothing much to add on that one. I say we move on to our 2 5 rounders here, our 2 fights that should be pretty entertaining to say the least. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Let's do this. 18-0 Shavkat Rakhmonov, 15-0 Ian Machado Gary. Short notice bout put together, and one that I'm really excited for. Someone's got to go, and we have ourselves a big favorite in Shavkat. He seems like he is inevitable to get the belt because he has been so dominant. 18 wins, all in come by finish. The guy is extremely dangerous. He has a ton of power in his hands, a phenomenal submission game. He seems like a killer. Got a cool hat too. The guy just has everything. Uh, he's facing Imachado Gary, a guy who has been heavily criticized, but a guy who is a phenomenal striker. He kind of wants that aura of Conor McGregor coming from Ireland, but a very good technical striker, can mix up on the ground if he has to, but a guy who just wants to be more patient, wants to break you down the stretch with his range, with his length. And I think in doing so, we have a very interesting clash of styles. I want to say right off the bat, I think the line can be a bit wide here. And I do think that Ian Machado Gary can win a lot of these striking exchanges because he has a good ability to manage the range. Like the guy is a very good range striker, and Shavkat's willing to eat a ton of strikes because he's got good durability and he can push forward. He wants to win in those dirty boxing ranges. I think Ian Gary has the ability to win minutes with his kicks, with his range, and with a more boring style. And I do think Ian Machado Gary wins, it's going to come by decision. And it's something that's going to be a boring fight. And we're going to hate ourselves for it. But I definitely think that is a possibility in this matchup. However, I do think more times than not, Shavkat gets a hold of him. I have seen Ian Machado Gary dropped. I have seen him taken down. I've seen him controlled. And I think that this Rachmanov guy is certainly a guy you do not want to mess with in these close exchanges. Choking out Jeff Neal like he did, the quick heel kicks he's had, the quick ability to have these nasty boxing. He is tough. He is durable. He will go forward. He will throw with fighting intention. And if this fight gets to the ground, I do favor him in the submission grappling. So you have to pick Shavkat Ramonov in my opinion. He's got 25 minutes to close the distance and get a hold of this guy, to which I do think he is stronger and the better submission and finisher guy. Again, am I going to be playing him at his price tag? Probably not. I do think Ian Machado Gary has an opportunity to win a decision. I just think more times than not, you have to favor the moments and the finishing ability of Shavkat Rakhmonov. Moments, minutes, give me Rakhmonov to win. DraftKings wise, Rakhmonov 9.2K, averages 105 points on DraftKings, scored above 98 in every single fight. At 9.2K, I'm going to have some exposure to him. I do like him. He is someone who I do think has 5 rounds to work, and I do think he's able to get a finish if I had to choose a method of victory here. So if he can get his hands on it, if he can close the distance, I do favor Rakhmonov, and at 9.2K, a very solid play. One of my favorite plays on the card. Flip side of things, even if you have a guy like Gary Wins, I don't think he's finishing Rakhmonov. So even a low volume, counter striking from range decision, I don't know if it scores too well at 7K. So I prefer other people in the slate. I think it's Rakhmonov for nothing. I think it'd be a very close, interesting battle. I think we're going to be a lot more entertained if Rakhmonov wins, but certainly a close ones. I am picking Rakhmonov in this one. And then the main event, the 28-5 Alexander Pantoja, 21-4 Kai Asakura. Cool to see Asakura here get a title shot in his very first fight here, but a couple things we need to see happen with this guy, right? He looked phenomenal from the tape I saw. He is a true athlete, shredded, ton of power, and a phenomenal striker at that. But we have to see how he fares at 125. We have to see how he fares against this UFC level competition, let alone against a UFC champion here. And I think what is tough for Kai Asakura here is his style that helps him win fights isn't the style that Pantoja loses by. You can see that you can fight really close to Pantoja if you're able to keep up with his pace, if you're able to scramble with him, and if you're able to go out there and have a war. Whereas it's super hard to knock this guy out, and he has the ability to go all 25 minutes. Kaya Sakura is a type of fighter who wants that early knockout. He's a ton of power, pretty good takedown defense at that as well, but is not the best pure grappler. Can be stuck on his back. Cardio has faded as the fight goes on too. So, in my opinion, if Asakura is not getting a knockout here, I think he's going to succumb to the pressure of Pantoja, the volume, and the grappling that Pantoja has shown. And I don't think that Sakura can keep up with that, especially for 25 minutes. Now, a knockout is certainly live every time Sakura steps to the ring, except for Pantoja has just got an iron chin. Like the cannibal is just, the guy can eat a lot of damage. So if that's the case, I have to favor Pantoja's ground game, his cardio, his volume, and his minute winning opportunity. And although Kyaskura can win moments, I don't know if he can stay safe for 25 minutes, match the volume, especially cutting down to 125, and be able to stay safe on the ground against someone as dangerous as Pantoja. And I have to pick Alexander Pantoja. On DraftKings, 8.8K, favorite play on the entire slate because he has pace, he has pressure, has volume. Scored 143 in all of his last 3 wins. The guy's a phenomenal drafting scorer, especially in 5 round bouts. And he's got the pace and he's got the pressure to go out there and score very, very well and beat someone like Asakura who can be taken down, who can be broken as the fight goes on, and who can't keep up with the volume that Pantoja brings. He's landed over 125 strikes in his last 3 fights, a ton of control time, over 8 minutes of control time, over 6 takedowns. Like the guy scores phenomenally well. I do think he breaks Escura. I think Escura is going to have a ton of success in this division. It's just a very bad stylistic matchup, in my opinion. That's going to do it for me here, though, on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. And quickly running through my quick picks, we're taking Alexander Pantoja, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Zahid Khan, Bryce Mitchell, Doo Ho Choi, Dominic Reyes, Themba Garimbo, we'll go Mozart Evloev, Brian Battle, Eric Anders, Joshua Van, Max Griffin, Chase Hooper, and Kennedy Njekwu. DraftKings wise, if I want to summarize my favorite place in this top range, I like me some Chase Hooper and get up to him. I like me some Rakhmonov and Pantoja. Those 2 5 rounds are my favorite plays in the entire slate. Whereas Kennedy Njekwu and Dominic Reyes are more of those pivot plays in tournaments because they do have KO1 upside, but maybe not the most certainty to it. Evloev at 8.9K also has a ton of takedown upside. And then both Battle and Garimbo rate out very, very well in their win conditions. Underdog wise, I love me some Duo Choi, favorite underdog. I think the only underdog I picked to win outright as a play this week. Whereas you got some Chiesa, whose path to victory includes wrestling, some Durden, whose path to victory includes wrestling, some Luque, whose path to victory includes probably a finish. All those guys read out very well. Whereas punt plays down low. Cron Gracie, if he wins, going to score 100 points. I think it's going to be a very good punt play. And I do think that both um, Smith and Luque win more than their price tag entails, so it's also good down low. Other than that, guys, you can check me out on Established Run off a podcast in about like 20 minutes, where you can check out some premium drafting content over there with Brett Appley, as well as CoolBet. I'll be releasing a video probably tomorrow with the CoolBet guys. Check out CoolBet using code Gordo. And that's going to do it here. Again, I apologize for the video quality. I apologize that it's just my face, not even centered in the screen. I couldn't even figure out how to rotate the camera. We're struggling today. And the mic isn't not up, so we're AirPodding it. So I appreciate you guys for tuning it in. Um, Apologize for maybe sniffling through the video. It's also a bit sick, but how do you guys a video? Had to go out here and talk some fights. So happy to talk any fights in the comment section down below. Leave any questions you may have, or check me on Twitter at gamblesgordo. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I wish you all the best of luck. Shout out to you guys for being here. And let's make some money, guys. Peace.